officially. So welcome to the Are Your Shoes Right For You Hangout. So as you're kind of getting settled in, I'd just like you maybe to let people in here. Just have a think about what sort of frustrations you're having with your body right now. And if you have anything you'd like to let me know about it and share, you can type it into the chat box here, and it might be useful for me and others who are here to get a sense of what everyone else is experiencing and why you're here. So is there a particular frustration you're having with your body that led you to want to show up to this hangout today? What are you hoping to get out of the hangout today? I hope you don't have any expectation that I'm going to tell you exactly what the right shoe is for you, because I can't do that. And in fact, I just want to say straight off the bat that I don't even have a particular shoe that is my favorite pair of shoe. To be completely honest, I have yet to find one that works perfectly for me and doesn't screw me up. But the more important thing to understand is that we can make our bodies robust to any shoes that we wear. It just takes a little bit of work, and I hope to give you a little bit of an insight into how to do that today. Okay. So this is kind of cool because there's some people that I know here in real life, and then there's some people that I have never met before. There's some people that I work with in person right now, and some friends from the internet that I've never met. There's some people that I've done anatomy in motion courses with, and there are some of my liberated body students here as well. So it's kind of an awesome mishmash of people. But we're all here today because maybe for some of us, shoe shopping is daunting and just inspires anxiety. If you're me, I'm like, I just don't want to go shoe shopping because I have no idea what the heck I want. And I just want to find a pair of shoes that I know I can buy for the rest of my life, and just, that's the one, buy 50 pairs of it and I'll have it forever. Maybe you're wondering if you're currently wearing the shoes that are working for you, and if you're not already wearing the pair of shoes that's best for you, what is this magical unicorn pair of shoes? Does it even exist? And I know that a lot of you, your body is having some complaints. I'm just reading as the chat box stuff comes in here. A lot of you are having some complaints, like your arches of your feet are sore, or there's a complaint that's not at your feet, but it's somewhere else in your body, that you're having some problems and some symptoms, and you'd like to know if there's a shoe that is going to be more useful for promoting better movement mechanics and helping you move towards that goal of moving pain-free. So we're going to see if we can find that out for you today. At the very least, we want to know if there is a pair of shoes that you're wearing right now that are making things worse for you, so that you can just throw them away because they're not useful for you. Give them to someone else who will love them better. And why is this even important to do? Well, I think it's pretty obvious that when we're in pain, our quality of life is not as good. We're not able to engage with the things that we love. And that's what it's about for me. I used to be a dancer, and I don't really do this because I dance anymore. Oh, Jennifer is saying that the audio isn't so good, so if people can turn off their videos, that usually makes the quality improve. So if you could do that, please, that would be amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you, Jennifer, for letting me know about the audio. There's always little things like this that come up. Hopefully no technical glitches today. We'll see if we can get through a whole session without any problems. That's always a miracle. So as I was saying, when we have discomfort in our bodies, it takes us away from the things we love to do with our lives. And for me, that used to be dancing. And now it's just kind of regular things. Like, I'd like to be able to just sit around on my butt all day and not have problems, to be completely honest. COVID stuff right now is making it so that I'm sitting a lot more and doing things like this and not actually doing a whole lot of working out or moving. And that's okay with me because I'm doing what I love, but I still want to be resilient to the amount of sitting that I'm doing. So it's important for me to make sure I'm doing things that are keeping me feeling good and moving well and not in pain all the time. I think that's probably the same for many of you guys here. So for many of you, if you're looking for, again, I just want to say, if you're looking for specific recommendations for shoes, that's not something I'm going to be able to give you today. I'm not here to tell you about my favorite pair of shoes, and I don't even really have strong opinions about particular brands of shoes. Only I want you to have a system that you're going to be able to use that puts you in the power seat so that you're making decisions that are best for you. I think that you can learn to trust your body and make it more robust to your shoes and make better decisions for it. And I know that if I can do this, then you can do this too. So if you don't know me, I want to give you a really quick backstory. I was a dancer up until age 22, at which point I had enough injuries that I had to stop. And my goal in life at that point was just to be able to walk for 30 minutes without any pain. And I'm happy to say I've accomplished that goal now, but it was definitely a bit of a process. And around that time that I embarked on that journey, I came across Anatomy in Motion, which is a course that teaches us how the body should move based on the joint mechanics of the walking cycle, which has been profoundly impactful on my body and one of the most important things for getting me out of that place where I was in pain all the time. And so what we're going to be doing today is based on those joint mechanics of how our body moves through the walking cycle. We're going to make sure that the shoes we're wearing aren't interfering with those exact mechanics. So that's the context for all of these self-assessments we're doing today. So today's lesson plan, we kind of have 5 main sections we're going to go through. First, I want to let you know about the 5 most important things I think we need to look for when we're choosing a shoe. Second, we're going to go through some basic foot mechanics so you understand what is pronation, what is supination, and why that's important for our bodies or our feet to be able to do, either in our shoes or when we're not wearing our shoes. So when we're wearing shoes, we still want our feet to be able to pronate and supinate. We shouldn't have our feet in these things called coffins. Our shoes should be able to allow us to move, not be restricting movement. We're going to learn the system that I call Does My Body Like My Shoes? And this is a simple systematic check-in that you can apply to any shoe for the rest of your life to determine whether it's helping you to promote better movement mechanics or if it's reinforcing some faulty patterns that are keeping you stuck. After that, we've gone through the system. I'm going to give you a little bit of homework so that you can start to integrate this stuff into your life. And I'm going to throw a challenge to you to use the system right away so that you don't forget about it. I'll give you, after that, a couple of tips for how to keep using the system going forwards, and then we'll have a bit of time for some questions and some answers. Okay, so the audio is still not super awesome. Sometimes it just improves as we go, so I'm hoping that is just a little bit of a rough patch and it'll get better. So I apologize. I'll do my best. If you need me to repeat stuff, you can let me know. So before we get into the 5 things I think is important to look for in a shoe, I want you to understand that the system that I'm going to show you, Does My Body Like My Shoes, is something I learned from Gary Ward, who is the creator of Anatomy in Motion. And I really recommend you look up his work. It's really useful. And it's based on the understanding that our body has this inherent and underutilized wisdom. I think that your body will tell you whether it likes your shoes or not. And we just need to know how to interpret that and listen a little bit better. Something that I just want you to know off the bat as well is that if you have, I want to say, not the best body awareness, this system might be a challenge to use at first. So don't give up on it. If you're not getting good information from the system, it might be that you just need to practice it a little bit more. I like to think of it as, you have a recipe to make a cake, and we know the recipe works. It's not a bad recipe, but maybe you're just not very practiced at following recipes. Like there's a little bit of nuance when you're following a recipe. If you've ever baked something, then you know that a cup of flour can be interpreted in many different ways. Is it a level cup? Is it a packed cup? Is it like a heaping cup? Is it fluffy? Is it sifted flour? Like there's a lot of nuance to that one cup of flour, and that one detail, whether or not you can pay attention to it, might make or break the cake. So I want you to know that sometimes we need to practice these things, and if it's not working for you right off the bat, practice the system. It's going to work for you if you give it the time and give it the chance, okay? So don't get discouraged if you're having trouble with it anyway. Okay. And if you don't feel like you're getting any good information from your body, it might also be that there's some noise in your system, like maybe there's a past injuries or some other symptoms that are really distracting your body, so it's hard to pay attention to anything else other than those things glaring at you. So if that's the case, then I'm going to have some recommendations for you at the end of today to help you learn how you can start to clear that noise out that might be distracting you from listening to your body. And lastly, I think I already said this, but I want to reiterate that I think that you can make your body robust to any shoe that you choose to wear by working on your movement mechanics and working on your foot mechanics. And I'll share a little bit more about what I mean by that at the end of today's session so that you can wear any shoe without the fear that it'll mess with your body. So I don't want you to give away your personal power to a pair of shoes or believe that something external like a shoe is the solution, the only solution to your body's woes. You can learn to trust your body and its wisdom, and you can learn to make it more robust to any shoes that you wear. And there are tools that I can share with you to help you with that. So I'm honored that you're here today with me. Okay, so let's get to the first lesson, which is 5 things to look for when you're choosing a shoe. And I think these are pretty common sense and low tech. So I think they'll be quite actionable for you guys. First thing, your foot needs to be able to both pronate and supinate in your shoes. We're going to get to what that looks like. If you're one of my people that I work with in real life, or you're one of my liberated body students, then you already know what pronation and supination look and feel like. If you don't, I want you to know that these are the 2 main movements our feet can do, and they should be able to do them regardless of whether your foot is in a shoe or not. So if the shoe is too restrictive, you'll feel how your foot can't move in it. And we're going to go through that in the system today with each of the shoes that you brought. Can your foot pronate in it? Can your foot supinate in it? The amount of pronation and supination you'll be able to do in a shoe versus barefoot is going to be restricted and a little bit more limited, but it should still be happening just a little bit. Your feet should not be boxed into a coffin, like just a thing that cannot do anything at all. We want all the joints of your foot to be able to articulate whether or not you're wearing a shoe. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that we want the sole of the shoe, I think, to be as thin as possible, but as thick and supportive as necessary. So this is going to be different for everybody. And this just reminds me, as an aside, of when I used to be a dancer and I did point. So I wore the shoes where you go up onto your tippy toes and they're literally just made of paper mache. And I had this really old school ballet teacher who was really adamant that we feel the floor through our shoes and we not wear any padding in them. And so I was like, yeah, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it the right way. I'm going to do it exactly like my ballet teacher tells me to. I don't think that was really smart at the time, but you know what? I definitely learned how to feel the floor. And I think I felt the floor a little too much, to be honest. So I think there's something to be said about being able to feel the ground through our shoes. So there should be enough pliability and a thin enough sole that you can feel the ground you're walking on, but not so thin that it's causing you problems. So I want to talk a little bit here about barefoot shoes. So barefoot shoes or minimalist footwear, these are the shoes that they talk about how their sole is how many ever millimeters thin that it is. I don't really know what the going number is for the ideal minimalistic shoe, but their point they're making is that you can feel the ground and it's like you're walking barefoot, and this is the best thing because this is more natural. Now, something I have to talk with my clients about when they're asking me about barefoot shoes and if they're right for them is that it takes a little bit of time to adapt to wearing a barefoot shoe. Imagine if your whole life you were just walking on cement on a flat surface and you're wearing thick shoes, and then all of a sudden one day you get the idea that you're going to wear the thinnest shoes ever. Do you think that might have some repercussions? I think it will. And in fact, I can speak from experience that it will. When I switched into barefoot shoes, like I work on my body and I work on my movement potential pretty extensively. So I could say that I'm probably a little farther along than a lot of people that are stuck in pain. And even when I transitioned to barefoot shoes, it immediately brought up all the symptoms in my left leg. And I couldn't walk in them for more than half an hour at a time. And so there was this claim that these barefoot shoes are better for you. They're more natural. They'll fix your problems. And here these shoes were bringing out my problems even more. So obviously there was a little bit of incongruency there. And so I think that it's important to recognize that there's a bit of a transition period we need to make when we're moving into wearing barefoot shoes. There's going to be a bit of a tolerance you need to build to them. And the way to make yourself even more robust to wearing these barefoot shoes is to make sure that your feet can move well. So that goes back to point one. Your feet need to be able to pronate and supinate in your shoes. And so we want the shoes, you want to be able to feel the ground as thin as possible, but as thick as necessary so it's not causing you any problems. I hope that makes sense. So it's not really a cookie cutter thing. It's going to be a little bit of tinkering for you to find the best sole for you. And as I'm going to show you in the system, there is a way of determining what that is for you. So number 3 of these 5 things, we want the toe box of the shoe to be wide enough. So the toe box of the shoe is where the width of the forefoot. So I have one of my shoes here that I'm going to test out. And these are actually minimalist shoes. You can like fold them in half. These are the ones that made all my symptoms flare up, but I can wear them now because I did the work to make my body robust to them. So I did do it, but it took some time. So these are pretty thin soles, but the toe box I really like because the toe box here is quite wide. These are Vivos. If you've heard of the brand Vivos, I like them a lot. Yeah, not recommending them necessarily to you, but I personally find these are useful. So the toe box needs to be wide enough because whenever we take a step, our foot needs to pronate. And whenever our foot pronates, our foot needs to widen. And if the foot widens, but your toe box isn't wide enough to accommodate that natural widening of your foot with each step, then you're going to be restricted. Something that I also find interesting is I do craniosacral therapy. I'm a practitioner, and I was learning about the interesting relationship between wearing braces and the cranial rhythm. So did you know that your skull it expands and contracts. It expands and contracts about 7 to 10 times per minute. And so if you're considering fitting braces, this is totally aside, but I think it's interesting and relevant. If you're fitting braces, you want to fit the braces to the phase at which your skull is expanding so that when you have that expansion of the skull, which naturally happens, the braces aren't restricting that natural expansion, which can screw things up and reduce blood flow and cause things like headaches and neck tension. So it's the same with our feet. We want our shoes to fit when our foot is the widest, which is when our foot is pronating when we're walking. So we're going to go through a little check-in to see if your foot can pronate and also what it feels like to have your foot wide. And so that widening of the foot, can your shoe accommodate that widening of your foot? So that's important to have the toe box wide enough, not just for when you're standing around, but for when your foot is pronating. Then fourth thing, this is going to be obvious, but we want your body mechanics not to be negatively impacted by your shoes. And that's what we're going to look at with the system. I'm going to show you, does my body like my shoes? So the system will tell you this. You might notice that one pair of shoes impacts on your neck range of motion. You might find that a different pair of shoes impacts on your pelvis motions or your back motions. So we're going to kind of find out what shoes are messing with what so you can choose appropriately for the occasion. Because it's not that you shouldn't wear a certain pair of shoes just because it has an impact that it maybe messes with your neck. We just want to know these things so that we're aware of them, so that you can make empowered decisions about what shoes you're going to wear, know the consequences of it, and then have a little shoe unwind routine. So if you know you're going to wear heels, because you have to for an event, not that we're really going to many events these days, but if you do wear heels just around the house for fun, and you know it's going to screw with your neck, you want to know if you have some strategies that you can go and unwind that stuff so it doesn't just turn into a long-term problem for you. So awareness and knowledge is power here. And lastly, you have to like the style of the shoes because we're not going to wear shoes that we don't like how they look. So I think it's really important to choose shoes that we also like the look of. That's just me because I don't think I'm fashionable, but I do have style, if that makes sense. All right. So what we're going to do next is just look at some basic foot mechanics. And what I want to do is pull out the slideshow from my Liberated Body workshop and just go through a couple of things for you. So bear with me here while I attempt to pull up my slideshow. Oh, okay, what do I need to do here? I need to share my screen. Here we go. Okay, come on, Zoom, do the thing. Aha, okay. You'll let me know if you're not seeing this. All right. So I think it's important that we want to know why pronation is important. As I said, there's two primary foot motions, pronation and supination. And we're going to go through what those feel like so that you have an awareness of that. So why do we want people to pronate? First, I think it's important to know that we're thinking about pronating as a verb, not as a noun. So pronating versus pronated. We want the foot to be able to move into pronation and then supinate and get out of it, not get stuck there. So what can be affected by a poor quality pronation? Because we want the foot to pronate in a very specific, healthy way. And when it's not doing that, we're going to have trouble with things like extensor chain load. So extensor chain, think of everything on the back of your body. So like your glutes and your hamstrings. In order for our glutes to work well, we actually need the foot to be able to pronate. Now, pronation also happens to be one of the main mechanisms for absorbing shock through the body. We need the foot to be able to pronate well so that we can also supinate well, because when we pronate the foot, all the muscles on the bottom of the foot start to stretch and load. And as the muscles stretch, it gives them the stimulation to contract. And then when the muscles under the foot contract, that's when the arch lifts and the foot supinates, which is what most people are so interested in doing, is learning how to create a higher arch. But did you know that the quality of supination is dependent on the quality of pronation? We need both ends of that spectrum. Not being able to pronate well has an impact on bunion formation, believe it or not. If you can't pronate well through one part of your foot, your big toe might adapt to form a bunion. And I actually did a movement deep dive session on this 2 weeks ago that went all into the mechanics of bunion formation. So you might like to get more info about that. Ask me when we're done. Things like plantar fasciitis and tight calves, those can be impacted if the foot cannot pronate, which means the muscles under your foot aren't going to be able to stretch. Spine mobility is impacted by the quality of foot pronation. And we can get symptoms anywhere in the body that can be stemming from the foot being unable to move. Another interesting thing is that the cerebral spinal fluid and the blood flow pumping has a relationship with how well the foot can pronate. That foot pronating and supinating, that pumping action actually helps or comes from the lower limb to pump the blood back up towards the heart. So it's a kind of important. Okay, so we're gonna make it super simple today when we look at how well our feet can pronate and supinate. So we're gonna look at the shape of our feet. When we pronate, the foot gets longer and wider, and when we supinate, the foot gets shorter and narrower. When we pronate, the bottom of the foot opens up and the muscles under the foot stretch. And when we supinate the foot, the bottom of the foot closes the joints and all the muscles shorten as the arch lifts. The pressure distribution is going to be a little bit different in our feet when we pronate and supinate, and different muscles are going to be stretching and shortening depending on whether you're pronating or supinating. This is an image of the foot tripod. So I want you to look at the red dots and the triangle it forms. So these are the 3 points of contact. What makes a pronating foot healthy or not is whether or not it can happen with those 3 points of contact. So if you're pronating your foot and you lose one of these points of contact, like your heel comes off the ground or your pinky toe comes off the ground, then that's no longer a pronating foot, that's just a foot that's rolling in. So there's a difference between a foot rolling in and a foot that's actually pronating, and we're gonna look at that more closely. So real quick, I'm gonna send you this recording and these slides after, so don't worry, you can have these for future reference. In a pronation, all of the arches of the foot lower to the ground. And in a supination, all the arches of the foot lift up from the ground. So these two motions are the exact opposite of each other. In pronation, the foot becomes mobile and adapts to the ground. And in supination, it becomes a rigid lever that you can push off of. A pronating foot, you're gonna feel widening and lengthening. So your shoe, or not your shoe, your foot actually will get bigger in size. And in supination, the foot shortens and narrows. This is why it's important to fit your shoe to the size of your foot when it's pronating. And if your feet don't pronate and you do this work and you start to get your feet pronating, you might need to go out and buy some new shoes that fit your longer, wider foot. That's happened to a couple of people that I worked with. So in pronation, if you're feeling where your foot pressure is, we want the pressure in your foot to be going forwards and onto the inside of the foot. And in a supination, it's the exact reverse. The pressure is going to be going onto the back and the outside of the foot, onto the heel. In pronation, all the joints on the bottom and the inside of the foot are going to be opening up, which will lead to all the muscles lengthening and stretching on the bottom and the underside of your foot. And the opposite is true. In a supination, all the joints on the top of your foot and on the outside are going to stretch out, and all the muscles on the top of the foot and the outside are going to stretch. Hope I didn't just repeat myself there. Okay, so now what do I do? Oops. Now I need to figure out how to get back to the main screen. Okay, so I'm gonna stop this. Okay, there we go. Hope you guys can all see me now. Sorry, I'm like really not the most tech savvy person. So what I'd like us to do now is just go through a little quick check to see if our feet are currently pronating and supinating. And then we're gonna give it the system a try to see if the shoes that you're wearing, your feet can also pronate and supinate in. Okay, so if you are barefoot and your feet cannot pronate and supinate, that is the first thing that you're going to want to work on to make your body more robust to the shoes that you're wearing. We want to make sure you have those movement mechanics back, and this is a big part of what the work is we do in the liberated body workshops I teach, and in Gary Ward's work. His courses Wake Your Body Up and Wake Your Feet Up and Anatomy in Motion. He's really big on making sure our feet can move because of the profound impact it has on everywhere in our body. So let's stand up and just go through these 2 foot motions. You're going to need your pen for this, for the first test, okay? So come on up with me. Find a spot in your room where you can stand with your feet side by side to begin. And let's just pick one leg that we're going to work with to start with. And you're going to put that leg forward. So I'm going to do my right leg first. And we're going to test out how well your foot can pronate. We're going to do this really quick and dirty. So this is not the full test that I would normally do with someone in person or even in my workshops. This is just to give you a little taste of it. So as you know, talked about, when you are pronating your foot, you want 3 points of contact on the floor. So just start to bend your knee and put your weight in your front foot. And make sure you can have 3 points of contact. So you don't want your foot rolling all the way in or all the way out. You want those 3 points of contact that I had in the photo that I showed you. Now, we also know that we want your arch to be lowering into the floor as you pronate your foot. So the idea is not to force the arch of your foot down, but can you feel your arch lowering as your body weight moves on top of it? Just take a moment to check in. Does the arch of my foot actually lower? Or are you stuck holding it up? Or is it just a little bit stiff and not moving down? We also want to make sure the weight can go onto the inside edge of your foot, so you're not rolling to the outside of your foot. The tricky thing is, in a good quality pronation, you want the weight to be going onto the inside of your foot, but not at the expense of your whole knee falling inwards. So think about your knee going towards your big toe, so it's going a little bit in, but not so far in that you lose this outside part of your foot. So keep the tripod there on the floor, and can you let the weight go onto the inside and the front of your foot without losing that tripod, letting your arch lower? Are these things possible? The weight traveling forwards into your foot? Can you keep your heel down? So what we're going to use the pen for next is to test how well our foot can widen and lengthen. So take your pen or your pencil, whatever you have, and just put it in front of your big toe. So it's touching your big toe, just in the front of the toe. As you do this knee bend, put your weight into your foot. If your foot is lengthening and your arch is lowering, when you come back, you can see that the pen is now pushed forwards maybe a millimeter or two from where it started. So see if this is happening for you. As you bend your knee and let your arch lower, and your foot should lengthen, does the pen get pushed forwards? For a lot of people, when they first try this, there's no movement in the pen. Nothing's happening because their foot arch is actually not moving. So don't worry if it's not happening right away. There are things you can do to work on this. So for me, my pen is moving just a little bit. It doesn't need to be big, but just enough that you see that this space here under your foot is lowering down and the foot is longer. So just quickly, let's try that with the other side as well, because you might have one foot that can pronate really easily and the other that's a little bit stuck. Okay. So I'm going to put my pen under my, or in front of my other big toe, and just bend your knee. So I don't want you to try to force your arch to the floor. Pronation actually doesn't need any muscular effort. It really happens by virtue of gravity and your body weight over your foot. And the natural mechanics of your foot, when your weight goes on top of it, is for it to pronate. So check with these things. You feel your arch lowering into the floor as you bend your knee. Do you feel your weight traveling more onto the inside of your foot? And if your weight is going into the inside of your foot, do you still have a little bit of weight in the fifth metatarsal head, the pinky toe side? Even though you're getting the weight on the inside of your foot, your knee shouldn't be dumping all the way in. There should be a little bit of ability to keep your knee going over your big toe-ish, with the weight traveling onto the inside of your foot and the heel down still. So if you have your pen in front of your big toe, are you able to push that pen forward? Does the pen slide forward because your foot is naturally getting longer? Does it feel like your foot has this pancaking action? And even if you have feet that have low arches, this should still be able to happen. Still be able to feel a little bit of movement happening, even if your feet are already kind of flat. Although it might be less than if someone has a higher arch, but it really depends. So have a couple of tries and get a little bit of information about how well was that pronation experience for you. Was it comfortable? Were your feet moving in the right way? Did you feel the pressure in your feet going in the right spot? Did you get the sense that the muscles under your foot were stretching? This is naturally how every step we take, the muscles under the bottom of our feet will stretch out a little bit. And we want this to be able to happen even when you're wearing shoes. That's why we don't want foot coffins. We want something that allows your feet to be able to move freely. Okay? Next, let's just test out how well your feet can currently supinate, which is the opposite movement. And this test is super simple. You're going to put your feet side by side in a comfortable hip width stance. And I want you to twist your whole body all the way to the right. And we're asking, as you twist to the right, what is your right foot doing down there? So take a look at your right foot. What you should see is just by twisting your body to the right, that should have a ripple effect all the way down to your right foot ankle. So you should see how you're going to step out of that sunny patch. I think there's some glare. As you twist, you can see that your right arch is lifting up off the floor a little bit, and your ankle is rotating externally. That should naturally happen just by virtue of your body rotating. And as that happens, you should have 3 points of contact on the floor. So this part of your foot shouldn't roll off to the side like this. Last week, my movement deep dive session was all about ankle sprains. So we discussed how sometimes when the foot cannot supinate well, and we just roll over the side like that and lose that first metatarsal contact. We want to make sure our foot can supinate well. There's 3 points of contact. The arch is lifting. The ankle is rotating externally. And the weight should be traveling back onto your heel and to the outside of your foot. So it's all of the opposite mechanics of the pronation did. So ask the question, how's my right foot? Is it supinating well or is it not? Check your other foot too, so just rotate your whole body towards the left and see, is it the same or is it different? For me, I gotta be honest, this is my foot that just is horrendous. It kind of just rolls to the outside, and I'm losing my first metatarsal. So my arch isn't really doing anything. I'm not getting that lifting, sucking up action. I'm just rolling to the outside of my foot. So that's the difference between a good quality supination and just a rolling to the outside of your foot. So as you twist, make sure that you feel what's happening. Is the arch lifting? Is your ankle externally rotating with you? Is your first metatarsal able to stay down or does it lift off? And you feel the weight traveling more to the back and outside of your foot. If yes to all of the above, then you've got a good quality supination. Congratulations, you're doing better than me. Don't have a good quality supination, don't worry, there are things you can do about this to help you out. I'll share those at the end of today's sessions. I've got some solutions for you. It's like some assistance. So that's our baseline check-in. How's that supination? How is the pronation? Is one foot doing it well, the other foot not? So that was our super quick foot mechanics primer. Can you pronate and supinate? Now we're going to get into our system. Does my body like my shoes? So have your shoes on hand. I asked in an email if you got it, what shoes are you bringing? The shoes that I'm working with today, because actually I haven't tested these particular shoes out yet, so it's going to be a total surprise for me. I might get screwed up, who knows. So I'm going to test out my Vivos, my barefoot shoes, which I know are not super ideal for me right now. They make my left leg unhappy if I wear them for more than half an hour. And I'm going to test out my hiking boots. Because actually I was wearing these a little while ago and my left foot started really bugging me. So I don't know where that's coming from. What exactly is going on when I'm wearing these hiking boots? I want to know. So these are my two boots, shoes, very different. One's very thick soled, very supportive, lots of ankle padding, and these are basically like you're wearing nothing. So grab your shoes and let's go through the system. Just have your shoes to the side, close by. So our first step is we just want to do a baseline check-in with a couple of joint mechanics. And these joint mechanics are things that your body should be able to do as you walk without even having to think about it. So these are unconscious, natural walking mechanics. The first thing we're going to check in is with your pelvis, because our pelvis tells us a lot about how well our body moves. It's like our foundation. So the first thing is going to be a pelvis posterior and anterior tilt. I'm going to use the technical anatomic language, because I think it's really important to have that language. It's really powerful to connect the appropriate language with the movement. So for a posterior tilt, we're basically going to tuck the pelvis under. So I want you to think about tucking your pelvis. So it's like your tailbone's going down to the floor and your lower back's rounding a little bit. So just test out, how does it feel? What's your range of motion like? Is there any discomfort? What does it feel like generally? And then do the opposite. So we're going to do an anterior tilt, which if you think about these two bones at the front of your pelvis here, you're going to think about those guys tipping forwards and down to the floor. So tipping forwards like your pelvis is a soup bowl, and you're spilling the soup forwards out the front of your bowl. How does that feel? Is it okay for your lower back? Which of those motions has more range? Up under, posterior tilt, or the anterior tilt, where you're spilling all the soup out the front of the bowl? Which one do you like better? Which one has more range, more ease? The reason we're checking in with these is because we want to know what your baseline is and whether or not you're wearing interfere with this natural motion or not. So if you'd like to make a little note now in whatever way works for you about how that felt, so we can record your baseline, that would be very useful. So take a moment to do that. And if I'm going a little bit too fast, that's why you're going to have the recording of this. So if you'd like to skip through to this section again, where we go through the check-in system, that will be useful for you to do if you missed some things the first time through it. Okay. So the next thing we're going to look at is our shifting ability of our pelvis. So I want you to pretend like your pelvis is just going straight down a conveyor belt. Have your knees straight and just shift your pelvis all the way to the right until it feels like there's no more weight in your other side. And just get a sense of what that range of motion is. Shift your pelvis all the way to the left and get a sense of how that range of motion goes. Which way was easier? Going to the right or going to the left? And was there any discomfort that you're noticing? You get a bit of like a stretch on the side of your hip. You feel like it's more stable going one way or the other. Whatever you notice is totally valid. There's no right or wrong answers here. This is part of the process of building some body awareness. And it gets easier the more you practice. You can become more objective at these subjective measurements over time. So pelvis stiff, right and left, going down a conveyor belt. Which one was easier for you? Going to the right, going to the left? And was there anything interesting sensation-wise that popped up for you? Any stretching, any feeling of joint movement or compression or anything really, any sensation that stand out? It's all good information. Okay, next we're going to look at some rotation. So I want you to put your hands on your shoulders to make sure that your shoulders are moving. And you're going to pretend that you're standing in a clock. So the front of the clock is 12 in front of you, 3 o'clock on the right, 9 o'clock on the left, and 6 o'clock behind you. Keep your shoulders at 12 o'clock, and you want to rotate your drawstring or your belt buckle towards 3 o'clock. Without moving your shoulders. See what the range of motion is like. Rotating your pelvis to the right. And then try going to the left. Rotate your pelvis all the way to the left. Which direction is easier? Make sure you're not twisting your shoulders with you. You want to make really clear that it's your pelvis we're looking at. So is right easier or is left easier? And what sort of things stand out sensation-wise? Is there any discomfort going one way? Any feeling of muscles stretching, going one way. Whatever you're noticing, just make a mental note about it. Actually, make a physical note. Write something down. Strong recommend that you do that. Otherwise, you might not remember. And then when we go and check your shoes, we want to have a comparison. Okay. Now, in the workshops that I teach, and in Gary Ward's work and in other people's work, we go through more stuff that you can check in with your pelvis and your hips. But we're just going to move along because I want to give you just a taster for today of what we're doing. Let's move up into your rib cage. And we're going to look at rotation here. So now you're going to keep your drawstring of your hand at 12 o'clock. So your pelvis is moving, and you're going to rotate your rib cage right now. What is the movement potential through your ribs? I don't know if you can see this, but I have some pretty clear restrictions here. When I'm going to the right, I'm pretty good, it feels okay. When I go to the left, I get blocked like right here. So we're not interested in how far you can force your body to go. We're interested in how far can you go before you naturally stop. We're not trying to do this to get more mobility or to push to the extreme. We're trying to see where's that natural stop point. So for me, it's right here. And the interesting thing for you to think about is all of these motions happen when we walk. There's a specific moment in time when we walk that your rib cage should rotate to the left. Happens kind of like that. So if you're having trouble just standing here doing a particular movement, and it's not really accessible, it might not be happening when we walk either. Just something to think about. That's why these movements are important and meaningful as a context to assess ourselves in. Now let's even go a step further and check in with our breathing and how well our rib cage expands when we breathe. So I'd like you to put your hand on the side of your rib cage and take a full breath in. And you're just feeling very simply for whether or not your rib cage can expand out to the sides. We call this a bucket handle action. Think of the lower rib cage like bucket handles lifting outwards and upwards. And as you inhale, you want to get the sense that that movement out is happening. So is that happening for you? Can both sides expand easily into the bucket handle motion, or is one side easier than the other? If you've been following me and doing this work with me for the past, like, I don't know, 12 weeks, you know that consistently my left side doesn't move when I breathe. But actually today it's doing pretty good, so something's different. The rep is thick. So check that out for yourself. And make a note about that. Make a note about your rib cage rotation, right and left. And make a note about your rib cage expansion as you breathe. Lastly, let's look at some neck stuff, because I think all of us probably could complain about something going on with our neck. So let's get clear on what the range of motion is at our necks today. First, I want you to do a lateral flexion. So we're going to go ear to shoulder. And try to do this as cleanly as you can. So as you're doing this, try not to like lift your shoulders or bend through your body. Just drop one side of your ear towards the shoulder. See what the range is like, and go on the other side. If you're having trouble doing one side without also twitching a shoulder or doing something else down below, that's also good information to have. So can you do this really cleanly? What's the range of motion you have here? Is there a feeling of stretch on your neck on one side? Do you feel like a bit of twitching on the side you're bending towards? Whatever information you get from this right now, write down a note. Now I think I'm just going to close my window. This beam of light is coming closer and closer to me. I'm getting a little nervous. All right, that should be better. Lastly, our last check-in we're going to do for our baseline assessment is just looking right and left. So I want you to turn your neck all the way to the right, then all the way to the left. What do you notice? Is there one way that's clearer than the other? How is the comfort of this? Is one side more comfortable? Is there a feeling of stretching? Or is there just a feeling of, oh, blocking? I don't like it. I get really blocked when I go to the left. So whatever stood out for you there, that's make your notes about that. And remember, if you're having trouble figuring out or feeling what's happening when you're doing this, like you're not sure, I don't know if it's right or here, or I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know if I'm getting a stretch. I just want you to know that, remember, this is a practice. And we're back. That's great. Oops, now how do I get back to the screen here? There we go. Sorry about that. Love Amazon. Actually, I don't love Amazon. I'm not super cool with other practices, but right now they're super useful. So I don't know, I've got a little bit of cognitive dissonance going on. Anyway, what was I saying? Yes, if you are not really sure what information you're getting, I definitely was there when I started this practice 5 years ago. I had no idea what was going on. I had the worst body awareness. It's kind of mind-boggling because I had a professional dance career. Like, how the heck was I a professional dancer without body awareness? Because body awareness can be very specific. We can train ourselves to be aware of very specific things, and this might be new stuff that you don't have an awareness of yet. So it's going to take a little bit of practice if you're not really sure what's happening. So I encourage you not to dismiss this if you find it like you're uncertain about what's happening. Just keep practicing this. Make this a daily check-in. It's very useful. And I'll show you why, because now we're going to check our shoes against it. So everything you just got as information is your baseline. Step 2 of the system. Let's put on a pair of shoes. So I'm going to go right for the big guns, put on my hiking boots. I don't have socks on, so this is going to be really comfortable. And I want you to, if you have ties on your shoes, like shoelaces, tie them as tightly as you would normally, like just wear your shoes how you normally would. Don't do anything differently. So I'm going to tie these guys up pretty tight. That's how I wear them when I'm hiking. I want nice and snug around my ankles. And so what we're going to do is take you through that same check-in process wearing your shoes. I know it's so simple that it seems like a no-brainer, but it's not really. A lot of people don't find this an intuitive thing. But when Gary first explained this practice to me, I was like, well, no, duh, this makes sense that you would do this. So what we want to know is wearing these shoes making your mechanics worse, better, or the same. If it's making things worse, these probably are not the shoes for you, or you have some work to do to make your body more robust to these shoes. So let's first start by checking whether or not your foot can pronate and supinate in your shoes. I already know I probably can't just by the way this feels, but let's find out for real. So put one foot forwards and one foot back. And let's go through that test. So I want you to bend your front knee. And I want you to feel if you can get a sense of your arch lowering in your shoe. And actually, believe it or not, I can feel my arch of my foot lowering right now. Can you feel 3 points of contact within your shoe? I cannot. I'm losing the outside edge of my foot. I'm feeling like, yeah, it's really challenging to do all 3 points of contact on my foot. I'm really, like, this is happening. I'm really rolling in on my foot more than normal when I'm wearing these. So my foot, the arch is lowering, that's one thing, but I'm really rolling in on my foot, so that's not so great. Are you feeling the weight going onto the inside of your foot? I am, but way too much. I can't control that, so that's not so good. I'm also losing my heel contact a little bit. I think these boots, the heel or the ankle padding is blocking my ankle from dorsiflexing. So dorsiflexing is the bending at the ankle here. So with all that stuff in the way, my ankle isn't dorsiflexing and my heel's lifting off the ground, right? So I'm not really getting good ankle movement with boots. So I don't know. I'm not entirely convinced that my foot is pronating well. I've got a couple of the points, but not everything. So give it a try on the other foot, because your other foot might have a different experience. So are you feeling the arch lower as then? The arch lengthening, spreading, and lowering. This foot feels relatively similar. I think I'm getting a pretty decent amount of arch compared to my baseline, which, by the way, isn't very good on this side. So it's not that my foot's moving well right now. It's just not moving any worse than usual. So that's okay. My weight isn't going onto the inside of your foot right now. And are you getting 3 points of contact? First metatarsal, fifth metatarsal, and heel. On this side, it's about the same. I'm losing my fifth metatarsal. So these shoes, I'm not pronating very well. I'm just really dumping in. And remember, we're not trying to control this. You're just seeing what's happening. What is your foot doing? What's your body doing? I'm losing my heel contact a little bit. I can't bend my ankle as far in these boots either. And I feel muscles stretching and lengthening under my foot a little bit. Yeah, so I've got that at least. So now let's check how well your foot can supinate in these shoes. You're gonna have to go by feel, not by visual, because now we can't really see what's happening. So twist your body all the way to the right. Oh man, yeah, that's not so good. My feet are not moving right now. But remember, it's okay if the movement is less, because by virtue of what a shoe is, it's going to compress the foot a little bit. So it's not gonna have as much movement. We just want to detect a little bit of movement in the right direction. So I'm feeling like a little bit of supination happening. My arch is lifting a bit. I can feel my ankle rotating a bit. My weight is going more to the outside and the back of my foot, but it's definitely not as good. Try your other side, rotate to your left. Yeah, that's not happening. Interestingly though, because of the compression of the shoe, my tripod is staying down in the sole of my shoe. So even though my foot might be rolling off to the side, because the shoe is there, there's actually something in contact with my first metatarsal. It's not the ground, but my shoe is still touching my foot. So that might be okay. Now my weight is really not going to the back of my foot. It's only going over the side. So I'm missing out on some of the supination. Could I make them happen? Probably. I could try to control my foot right now, but when we're walking, there really isn't enough time to micromanage our joint mechanics, because we have to trust that our bodies have got this and walk. It's way too fast to control. So that's why I don't want you to try to think, okay, I'm gonna hold down my first metatarsal and I'm gonna lift my arch. No, just twist and see what the natural response is. Okay, so that was part one. Now let's check out those pelvis movements. So you can compare, are they better, same, or worse wearing these shoes right now? So let's start with that posterior tilt of the pelvis. So tuck under, does that feel better, worse, or the same? For me, this is about the same, so that's good. If it's the same, hallelujah, your shoes aren't messing with you. Your hips can still move. Try your anterior tilt, so feel the two pelvis bones at the front, moving forwards and down to the floor. And this also feels actually quite a bit better. I feel like I have more range of motion and it's more comfortable. So that's kind of cool. I didn't know that about these boots and their relationship with my body. So get your information. Posterior tilt, Same, better, worse than your baseline? Under, anterior tilt. Same, better, worse than your baseline. If there's any new discomfort or a symptom starts to show itself, then you might be able to correlate these shoes might not be helping that. Okay. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to go a little bit more quickly because we need to not be here for 3 hours, which, oh my God, I totally could just talk about this stuff for hours and lose track of time. So stop talking, Monica, do these things. So let's do our pelvis shift. Shift your pelvis all the way to the right and see if that feels same, better, or worse than before. What's going on for you? If it was here going one direction than the other, is that still the case? If there was these feelings of stretching that were uncomfortable, are they still there, or are they even worse now? Or maybe it felt totally fine before and it feels totally fine now, so there's no interference from your shoe. What I'm noticing actually is this makes things a little bit more clear for me. So now when I shift to the right, I can really feel how this is the more easy side for me. And when I shift to the left, I can really feel that I have some restriction. So it wasn't really clear to me before, but now I'm wearing these boots and I can really feel the difference. So I'm not really sure what that means yet. I'm gonna sit with that information and see what comes up. So get your information about your pelvis shift compared to your baseline. Okay, next, pelvis rotation. So block your shoulders, twist your pelvis all the way to the right, and then all the way to the left. And oh, this is different for me. These boots actually seem to help me get more rotation to the left than before. So that's pretty cool. How about you? Do you feel like your range of motion is different? Do you feel like you're noticing any different muscle sensations? Anything that comes up, does this make things better for you or worse for you? Now let's keep rolling through these assessments. Check out your rib cage rotation now. So keep your pelvis to the front. Rotate your rib cage to the right. Now here's my moment of truth. Oh, that's even worse. If you remember before, I had a hard time rotating my rib cage to the left, and now it's even worse. Okay, this is good to know. So will I really want to be wearing these shoes for long durations of time, knowing that when I wear them, I get worse rotation to the left? Probably not. So these are the boots that I wear when I go on long hikes. So what am I gonna do? Man, I don't wanna buy new boots because these were expensive. So I'm gonna try to find ways of making my body more robust, opening up more movement options so that when I wear these boots, I don't run into problems. So let's look at that breathing thing now. Breathe in and feel how that expansion is of your rib cage. Same, better, or worse. Just take a few breaths. For me, it's a little bit worse, unfortunately. Oh well, gotta know the truth. Love these boots, but my body doesn't. Now let's check your neck. What's your range of motion like through your neck? Right and left lateral flexion. This feels about the same to me. So these boots might not be impacting on my neck a lot, which is fantastic. And when you're ready, try your neck rotation right and left as well. So interestingly, wearing these boots makes my neck range of motion even better. It makes my rib cage range of motion a lot worse. And it makes my pelvis range of motion feel about the same. So that's kind of wacky. I'm not really sure what to do with that information yet, other than next time I wear these boots, notice what starts to happen. If I go for a walk and I start to notice my left shoulder is bugging me, and I know that when I wear these boots, my rib cage doesn't move very well, maybe that's what I need to unwind after that hike. Make sure that my rib cage and my shoulder, it just get messed up because of these boots. So make any notes you need to make. And now let's do a shoe quick change and test your next pair of shoes. And it's going to be the exact same process, but it's fun to do it together while we're here with the intention. You can give yourself, like you can categorize the shoes that we're doing now into, would I wear these shoes for X, Y, Z? Would I go for a walk in these for more than half an hour? Would I wear these just to an event where I know I'm going to be sitting around? Would I do a gym workout in these shoes? Like you kind of want to know, based on how your mechanics are changing when you wear the shoes, what would these be a good occasion to wear them for? And you can even do this with if you're a lady and you have high heels and you like wearing heels. I love wearing heels once a year. If you have heels, you can totally check in and see, like probably those are doing something weird with your body, but maybe you can refine what exactly is the thing of my body that is getting messed up. And then have some shoe unwind strategies afterwards. Okay, so now I've got my Evo barefoot on, my barefoot shoes. And let's go through that same process, and we'll do it just a little bit more quickly now. You can always come back later and do this at a slower pace when you feel like it with your other shoes. So first thing we're going to do is test out how well can your foot pronate and supinate. So put one foot forward, one foot back. Bend your front knee, and you feel all of those key mechanics of pronation when you do. So can you feel your arch lowering and your foot lengthening and widening? For me, definitely much better than when I was wearing those boots. Can you feel the weight going more onto the inside edge of your foot, but still keeping 3 points of contact? So you're not losing the outside edge, lifting feet off the ground, rolling inwards. Can you feel your foot? Lost my train of thought there. I'm gonna say, can you feel the weight traveling into the front of your foot, but with your heel still staying down? So we don't want your weight going forwards, but your whole heel popping up off the ground. So for me, this feels relatively similar actually to if I was barefoot, which is kind of cool. So let's try your other side. Bend your knee. Where's the weight going? Does it go to the inside of your foot right away, or do you roll to the outside of your foot? Are you able to keep 3 points of contact without your knee dumping all the way in? Does your heel stay down? Does your pinky toe side of your foot stay down? Does it feel like you're getting a little bit of lengthening and stretching on the bottom of the foot? Can you feel those bones spreading out, getting longer and wider? Do you feel motion of your foot inside of your shoe? And now let's check out the supination. So just twisting your body. Do you feel your arch lifting? The weight going to the outside and back part of your heel? When you feel like the first metatarsal stays pretty much on the floor, or if you roll off to the side of your shoe, side of your foot. Let's try the other side. Check. And remember, the motion your feet do in a shoe is going to be a bit lower than if you were barefoot, obviously. So don't worry, it's minimal movement. As long as there's a bit of movement in the appropriate direction, that's what we're looking for. Do a few tests and see how is that going for you. And the more you practice these check-ins, the faster you'll be able to roll through these assessments. And you can literally do this at the store in like 1 minute. and know if it's a good pair of shoes for you or not. Okay, so these feel basically like I'm barefoot, which is kind of the point, so that makes sense. Let's look at your pelvis now. So let's try that tuck under, posterior tilt of your pelvis. And just compare this to your baseline we did earlier. How's the tuck under? How is the anterior tilt of the pelvis? Now what's interesting is this feels about the same as my baseline, but not as good as when I had my hiking boots on. Because the pelvis is one of the bones that creates the hip joint. That's kind of interesting. It means that my hiking boots actually are encouraging a little bit better motion in my pelvis, which means probably when I'm hiking, my hips are moving really well, which is awesome. You want your hips to move well when you're hiking, but they're limiting my ankle mobility, which might actually be useful because we don't want our ankles to be too floppy when we're hiking up and down hills, right? But hey, that's kind of cool. Anyway, let's get back to the pelvis check-in. So get your information about that anterior and posterior pelvis tilting, and let's move into the shifting right and left. So put your feet side by side and shift all the way to one side, and shift all the way to the other side. And just see if it's the same or different from your baseline. Does anything feel worse? Does anything feel better? What we're going for is things feeling the same or better. That would be amazing. Doesn't always happen, but if it does, then you know your shoes are doing something good for you. When you're ready, let's do our rotations with your pelvis. Remember back to what your baseline was. Is this the same, better, or worse for you right now? For me, this is, I think, about the same as my baseline, maybe even a little bit better. Although I'm getting some cramping to the side of my rib cage now. So I don't know how I feel about that. Okay, and let's now look at rib cage rotation. So keep your pelvis to the front, just twist through your rib cage. Here is my biggest indicator. That's a lot better. How very interesting. This is actually better than my baseline. So I didn't know this. I can actually feel some abs right now too when I'm twisting to the left. I never felt that before. So when I'm barefoot, I have trouble going to the left. When I'm wearing my hiking boots, I have even more trouble going to the left. When I wear my Vivos, I can go way farther to the left and I feel some abs. So that's kind of peculiar. Okay, breathing. Check in with your breathing. Do you feel that bucket handle action? Same right and left. Is it better or worse than your baseline? And lastly, the neck range of motion. So tilt your head to one side. Just do this a few times. Don't try to force anything. Is it the same or worse or better? Try the rotation. This actually feels pretty good, pretty normal compared to my baseline. So I gotta say that these shoes actually are not really messing with me too much. They're actually making things feel pretty normal and in some ways even better. So that is something I did not know. So make any notes that you need to about your two pairs of shoes, or if you had orthotics that you tested out, that would be a great thing to do with your orthotics, make sure they're still useful and doing good things for you. So what would one now do with this information? So I want you to think about how you could use this check-in process with all of your shoes. And a nice thing to do would be to go through every pair of shoes that you own and see if the shoes are working for you. What are they affecting? What parts of your body? Because as I noticed, I wasn't sure what I was going to encounter, but different parts of my body liked different shoes. So that's kind of interesting. I wonder if the same thing happened for any of you guys. So what I'd like you to do now to kind of keep you guys in the work is propose some homework to you to practice this system and get even more out of it and continue to use it for the rest of your life if you'd like to. So your first piece of homework, if you'd like to write this down, if you're someone who likes homework and whatever, if you don't want to do it, that's also okay. I don't really mind. You do you. But I want you to go through all of your shoes and go through this system with all of your shoes and categorize them so that you can choose which ones work best for which functions. So I realized different things about my shoes. And even though my Vivos, my barefoot shoes, were actually improving a lot of my mechanics, the sole itself is still so thin that I can only wear them for so long. So what might be another fun thing to do is to do this check-in process again after having worn the shoes out for a walk. And then come back and do like 1 minute, just quickly go through your pelvis, go through your rib cage, go through your skull, go through your breathing after doing a walk in the shoes and see if the duration that you're wearing them also has a factor to play. Because I know for me it does. Because I know more than half an hour in my Vivos and I'm feeling some weird stuff. I'm feeling some discomfort. So you want to know, is the duration that you're wearing them also a factor? And here's a challenge for you. So if you actually do this and you go through all your shoes and you check them out, what I want you to do is email that back to me. Email me your completed list of shoes. And if there's enough interest in this, as a special bonus for you guys who actually do this homework and send me back the list of shoes, we can do a 30-minute little small group shoe foot mechanics consultation movement session thing to troubleshoot. And if you were someone who wasn't sure if you were doing the pronation and supination well, we can spend a little time going through that together as a little private session. So for anyone who's interested in that, that's your incentive to do this challenge. Go through your shoes, send it to me, and then we can, anyone who sends that email back to me with your list of shoes, we can plan a small group session, all of us together, and go through some foot mechanics, because I think that would be fun and useful. Okay? Your second piece of homework, I think, would be the most useful thing to do is to use this system when you go to the shoe store to try shoes on. So when you're trying your shoes out, put them on. Don't worry about looking awkward and weird in front of the shoe salesman. Just go through the check-in process, and then you will have some good information about how your feet are moving and how the shoe is affecting the rest of your body. The third thing I'd like you to practice is just doing these assessments on yourself. Just practice them to develop some self-awareness, some body awareness, develop some objectivity with these tests. Because remember, you might actually need to practice these assessments on their own to get enough baseline information to make this system valuable for you. So I want to remind you not to dismiss this system if you didn't get any meaningful information from it today. This might be just a bit of a process for you. Because remember what I said, when I first started doing this, I was not getting good information from my body, but I had this intuitive sense that it would be useful for me to be able to have that awareness of my body. Like, I should be able to tell whether or not my pelvis is shifting farther right or left. That seems like I should be able to do that. That's like a pretty basic level of body awareness. So if you are someone who feels like you were not getting good information from your body just as a baseline, please practice these check-ins daily. These are also the check-ins that are the backbone of my workshop, Liberated Body. We go through them every day so that we can tell how your body is adapting over time and what we need to do to help you move forwards. These are also the exact check-ins that Gary teaches in his Anatomy in Motion courses. So they have a lot of good utility to them. This is how we start to tap into the wisdom that our bodies have, okay? And we all have this inherent wisdom, but it might be just not something we're practiced at tapping into. So just a little review of what we did today and tips for how to keep going with this stuff. So I want you to use the system, like I said, for all your shoes. Categorize them. Does your body like them? Does your body like them or not? What movements get better? What movements get worse? And I want you to feel the way you want to feel, because we can't really control how we're going to feel, but I want you to be empowered by this. I don't want you to feel limited by this, like you can't wear a certain pair of shoes now. I don't want you to think that because a pair of shoes is not really helping your body move well, I don't want you to banish that pair of shoes forever, because someone's typing in the chat box about rock climbing shoes, and those shoes are designed to be restrictive. So you're gonna probably not move very well wearing your rock climbing shoes. Same with like point shoes. So don't banish a pair of shoes just because it's messing with you a little bit. But remember, the purpose of this is to help you make better informed decisions about your shoes, regardless of whether they're good for you or not. And then just having better information about what your shoes help you with or don't help you with, that will inform how much self-care you need to do before and after wearing those shoes. So if you're planning to go for a hike and you don't have a good pair of shoes to wear, probably you're going to want to spend like 30 minutes or 10 minutes after that hike doing a shoe unwind routine. So do you have some strategies that you could consider are a shoe unwind routine? So if you decide to wear a pair of shoes that your body doesn't like, do you have the things, the strategies, the tools to do something about that so it's not going to mess with you for the next week? You should have some tools. I'm going to tell you, as a human being, we should all have some tools to help us out. And know your threshold. Know how long you can comfortably wear a pair of shoes for. For me, I know my Vivo's half an hour. That's it. Longer than that, I should wear a different pair of shoes, or I should have a pre-planned chunk of time set aside to do my post-shoe unwind movement session. And that shoe unwind stuff, that's the kind of thing I go into in my Liberated Body workshop. There's a ton of stuff in there that helps to create a post-shoe wearing unwind routine. Okay, so I just want to remind you of a couple of things before we get to the Q&A. So the first thing is that there are a couple of giveaways that I want to give for anyone who was here live. So I wrote down everyone's name who showed up live, and I'm not going to pull the draw today, but I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'm going to put everyone's name in an actual hat. And there are a couple of things that I'm giving away for anyone who came live today. So the first of those giveaways is a copy of Gary Ward's Wake Your Feet Up program. I don't remember how much it costs usually, but it's like 15 pounds or something like that. So you might get the opportunity to win that. And if I pull your name, I'll send you an email. The other thing, the other prize that I'm happy to give away for you guys is free access to the home study edition of my Liberated Body workshop, which is usually a $45 value. And so that is the exact 4-day Liberated Body workshop, but put together as an online course you can do at your own pace. So I'm really proud about that. And I'm still kind of tweaking it, but I'm pretty proud of how it turned out. So if you are interested in learning some stuff for the post-shoe unwind, then that will be something that we'll definitely get some strategies from. And the last thing is, for one person, if I pull your name, you'll get a free month of access to my online platform, which is usually a $50 value. And in the online platform, you get access to all of the things that I do. So you get access to the Liberated Body workshop. You get access to my 2 weekly movement sessions, my strength training sessions, and my movement deep dives. And you get access to a few other things, some other stuff that's at a discounted rate that I do online. So that's 1 month free all access membership to one of to my liberated body online movement communities. So that's pretty exciting, I think. I mean, not to toot my own horn, but I think it's a pretty cool thing. So that's that. So I'll be pulling those names from the draw tomorrow, and I'll email whoever I pull. Okay. And lastly, for everybody who is here now, if you are interested in my next Liberated Body workshop, I have a special promo code for you that's going to be valid until today at 12 a.m. So until the end of the day, you can use this promo code and it will give you $10 off my next Liberated Body workshop as a special thank you for coming today. So the usual workshop is $50 and you'll get $10 off, so it'll be $40. And usually when I teach this workshop in real life, it's $150, so you're getting a pretty sweet deal anyway, just doing it online. So into the chat box right now, I'm gonna put in the information about that. There's gonna be a link you can go to and then a promo code. So check the chat box and save that information. That promo code is gonna be good until the end of today, okay? To get $10 off. So that's that. I just wanted to give you guys some thank yous for coming to this because I think it's super fun and I really appreciate you guys showing up and doing this with me today. So now if you have a bit of extra time, I know this took a little while. I tend to go long. I mean, I can go for a long time on this stuff because this is what I think about all day and I lose track of time. So for anyone who wants to stick around a little bit longer and has some questions, if you want to type those into the chat box now, I'm happy to address a few questions, okay? Or any experiences. Tell me about what you noticed about your shoes. I'm super curious if you noticed anything about the different shoes that you wore today. Here's my pen. I'll write some stuff down. My foot pen. I'm just writing everyone's name down right now too, so that I don't miss anyone when I do the draw tomorrow. Okay. Oh, that's awesome. Your house slippers improved many of your movements. That's good to know. The shoes you wear around your house all day actually are useful for you. Yeah, the hiking boots have a strong arch support and the foot teeters in it. That's what I noticed too, Angie. Yeah, my foot was more like inverting and everting versus pronating and supinating. But I don't know. I want to do some research on that. Maybe that's a good thing. And yes, Cheer, you came late to the shindig. Yeah, there is a recording. I'm going to be sending out the recording of this tomorrow. So stay tuned to your email. I'll send that out tomorrow, as well as I'll be sending you information about the draw that I'm doing tomorrow as well. Jennifer, Birkenstocks cause movement restrictions. Interesting. Yeah, because Birkenstocks are often touted as one of the shoes that are good to wear if you have like plantar fasciitis, stuff like that. But I think it's also like, maybe Jennifer, how long have you been wearing those Birkenstocks for? Because sometimes we wear our shoes into such a strong pattern that maybe it's not the Birkenstock, maybe it's the footwear pattern that got worked into the Birkenstock that's no longer serving you. So maybe a fresh pair of Birkenstocks actually might be good. Who knows? I don't know. Callie, what are you writing here? Yeah, the toe box seemed suffocating in your hiking boots, eh? So that's good to know. Remember, the toe box width is really important because when the foot pronates, the foot widens. So we want to be able to have the toe box wide enough so that when you pronate, because now you all know that you need to pronate your feet when you walk, so that when your feet pronates, you do want to have the toe box wide enough to accommodate that. Olga's asking about the bunion workshop. Okay, so the bunion workshop was 2 weeks ago. It was for my Liberated Body students. It was one of my movement deep dives, and these are the workshops that I do every week. There's a different theme. So if you'd like to get in on that bunion workshop, send me an email. I can hook you up with how to get access to that workshop. And if you are one of the people that wins the one person who wins my all access membership, all of my current 12 movement deep dive sessions are archived there. So you can go back and look at the bunion workshop. That's in the movement deep dive archive on my all access platform. So if you win, Olga, then you'll get to find it, but I want to hook you up with it anyway. So just email me and I can let you know. Okay. Just reading what else. How do we know when a tightness is about a real tightness, that is about an increased stability through the body, versus the tightness that is about the body accommodating in a pathological way? That's an interesting and very deep question, and I don't know how well I'm going to be able to answer that. How do we know if a tightness is about a real tightness, that is about increased stability? So a tightness that would be like an actual muscle shortness. Is that what you mean, Mariah Jane, that the tightness is related to the actual muscles being shorter, providing increased stability, versus tightness that might be related to a pathology or like a symptom or something? I don't know if that's something that I can generalize. But I think that the better we know our bodies, we can get this sense of, is that useful or is that not useful? And I've come to this place where I am pretty sensitive in my body, so I can tell whether right away my body is like, yes, I like this, or no, I don't. And I can generally sense whether or not that feeling of tightness is just like a muscle stretch because of tissue shortness or fascial restriction. That's not a bad thing, it's just fascial restriction. Versus it's like a sort of pain symptom that's related to a real problem. So one way of looking at this is maybe historically, was there an injury there? Does it set off alarm bells in your body like, oh, I don't want to go into that? I think these are things that it's hard to generalize about, so I don't want to say too much, but these are actually some of the things that I work with my clients one-on-one, because a lot of the times we don't really know how to interpret the signals that are coming from our body. And this is what I mean when I say there's noise. There can be a lot of noise that came from the effects of past injuries, and even long-standing chronic pain can start to create a lot of noise through our system, and we get kind of lost about, is this a good feeling or a bad feeling? And that's going to be a really individual journey. So I wish I could have a better answer for that, Mariah Jane, but it is a little bit of an individual ongoing process. And yes, Olga, you could also purchase it if you wanted to do that bunion workshop. Any input if deep lunge was shaky in deepest attempts? So just make sure I understand what you mean by that. So in that, are you talking, Drew, about the pronation lunge test we were doing? That when you go deeper into it, you feel shaky? I just want to make sure I know exactly what you're asking. Okay. So the idea of that lunge isn't necessarily to go as deep as possible. It's just to go into a knee bend and feel what's happening in your foot. So if you're going deeper and deeper into it, it might show you that it's getting shakier as you go, if maybe the mechanics of foot pronation are not happening very well. So I don't know if this is true, but maybe it feels shaky because you lost 3 points of contact. Do you know if that was true for you? Did you lose maybe your heel on the ground? Did you lose the outside of your foot on the ground when you were going deeper into the lunge? And if you wanted to stand up and try it, if you go deeper and deeper and you get to a point where the heel and the outside of your foot start to lose the ground and you're losing your tripod, the foot in the shoe, you felt 3 points of contact, but the muscles shook. Okay, that's not a bad thing. So if you're feeling like you have still 3 points of contact, that's great. You've got a solid base to support you, but the muscles shook. That's okay. Like, muscles are supposed to work, right? So it might not be a bad thing. But if you are finding that the deeper you go into your lunge, you lose more contact with your foot. So you go from this nice full tripod to just like a skinny strip that you're balancing on. That's showing you that there's a certain threshold at which the deeper you lunge, the less useful foot mechanics you have. So the solution isn't necessarily to keep lunging deeper, but to try to increase the ability for your foot to maintain a tripod as you go deeper, and don't push past that threshold. Increase the threshold appropriately by paying really close attention to, with every millimeter you're bending forwards, you still have 3 points of contact. So Nancy's asking, if you lose a point of contact in your baseline, what should you do? Anything, or just know that it is your baseline? Yeah, good question. It's your baseline, so it's really just you're checking in with what is happening now, not trying to change it yet. And then that's the information that's telling you, maybe there's something that you'd like to do about this. So in my Liberated Body workshop, we go through specific exercises to help improve the joint mechanics of your foot. So this could also go back to Drew's question about what happens if it gets wobbly the deeper you go. Well, we want to make sure you have the foot mechanics to support you so that when you go deeper into that lunge, you still have your tripod because your foot is moving well. Because a lot of that losing the tripod is because the foot bones aren't articulating well into the pronation or the supination. So if you're losing those contacts in your baseline, then that's telling you probably there's something you want to do about that by using some specific exercises. Maybe there's an old injury that didn't get the appropriate care it needed, and that's kind of messing with you. So you might want to go back and look at that thing, like an old ankle sprain. Maybe that's still affecting you and you need to do something about that. So your baseline will change as well. If you do the work, if you do some work, someone's work, whether it's mine or whether it's someone else that you trust who teaches some stuff like this, if you do some work, you should see your baseline changing if it's effective for you. So that's a good question. Yes, we want to know that it's your baseline. There's stuff you can do about it, but you're not actually trying for this particular system. You're not trying to change your baseline. It's just being your point A for now. I hope that made sense. Olga says, you'd like to share this with your daughter? Absolutely, yeah. Like, feel free when I send you the recording of this, you can send it to anyone you want. Like, I want this information not to just be secret. Some of the paid content that I do, the paid workshops, like, they're paid because it's my time, and also I think this work has value. But this system, I think everyone should know about this. So feel free when you get the recording tomorrow, share it with whoever you want to share it with. I have no problem with that. Cool. I hope I answered those questions effectively. It's always like the most anxiety producing thing when you're doing these live Q&As and people ask questions and it's like, oh my God, am I actually going to be able to answer them? But I also have no problem saying I have no freaking clue. If I don't know something, I'm going to own it. Cool. So I think that, what's the meaning of life? You know what? I think the meaning of life is, I'm honestly going to go for it. I think the meaning of life is to know what our gifts are and share them with the world and leave the world a little bit better of a place than when we came into it. Like, I honestly think that's what it is. And this is what I think I'm here to do is I think that I have a gift to share movement with the world and how movement can set our bodies free. And I think that everyone needs to know about it. And I think that it's kind of the way that I'm going to leave the world a little bit better of a place than when I came in, if I can share this with everyone who will be willing to receive it. So, Drew, that's the meaning of life. Although I have no fucking clue. Oops, sorry. I dropped an F-bomb. I don't know if that's appropriate. I don't know if there's anyone here under 18 or sensitive people. Sorry. Anyway, maybe that's a good note to wrap up on because you all have lives and it's time to make dinner here in Toronto. So thank you guys for coming today. I hope that was useful. If you have any questions, shoot me an email and stay tuned to your email tomorrow. I'm going to send an email about the winners of the draw. And remember, use the promo code. It's valid till the end of the day to sign up for my next workshop, which, I should have told you the date. The date's September 19th. September 19th is my next Liberated Body 4-day workshop. Use the promo code to sign up. And Yeah, I swear a lot too, Olga. It's all good. No judgment. Isn't there some kind of study that was correlating people that swear a lot with a higher IQ? Not that IQ actually really means anything, but just kind of funny. Anyway, thank you guys. Thanks for coming. Every month I'm going to do one of these. So check back on my website for the theme next month. I think we're going to do something with the hips. So have an awesome day, guys. See you next time.